Marcus Tate had been navigating the gritty streets of Tucson for nearly a decade, delivering packages with a precision that went unnoticed. Every loading dock, every back entrance, every distracted office worker signing for a parcel, he knew them like the back of his hand. The job wasn't flashy, but it kept the lights on, and Marcus took quiet pride in doing it right. Most people saw him as a fleeting presence, just a guy in a uniform blending into the urban hum. Invisible, forgettable. But at Sterling and Vance, a glossy advertising agency with polished chrome fixtures and sprawling city views, that invisibility came with a sting. The first time Marcus pushed through their gleaming glass doors, he expected a quick drop-off, nothing more. But he couldn't miss the way the staff's eyes slid past him, or worse, lingered with a faint smirk. The receptionist, tapping away at her keyboard, barely nodded as she scrawled her signature on his tablet, already turning back to her screen. It wasn't personal, not at first. Marcus was used to being overlooked. But as his deliveries to Sterling and Vance became routine, the subtle slights sharpened into something harder to ignore. The whispers as he walked by, the glances that sized him up and found him wanting. Out in the scorching Arizona heat, he climbed into his delivery van, the weight of those moments settling heavier than the boxes he carried. They didn't see Marcus Tate, the man. They saw a uniform, a role, a nobody. And as he gripped the steering wheel, the Tucson skyline glaring back at him, a spark of defiance flickered. They thought they knew who he was. They had no idea what he was capable of. But soon they'd learn, the hard way. Marcus Tate had been navigating the gritty streets of Tucson for nearly a decade, delivering packages with a precision that went unnoticed. Every loading dock, every back entrance, every distracted office worker signing for a parcel, he knew them like the back of his hand. The job wasn't flashy, but it kept the lights on, and Marcus took quiet pride in doing it right. Most people saw him as a fleeting presence, just a guy in a uniform blending into the urban hum. Invisible, forgettable. But at Sterling and Vance, a glossy advertising agency with polished chrome fixtures and sprawling city views, that invisibility came with a sting. The first time Marcus pushed through their gleaming glass doors, he expected a quick drop-off, nothing more. But he couldn't miss the way the staff's eyes slid past him, or worse, lingered with a faint smirk. The receptionist, tapping away at her keyboard, barely nodded as she scrawled her signature on his tablet, already turning back to her screen. It wasn't personal, not at first. Marcus was used to being overlooked. But as his deliveries to Sterling and Vance became routine, the subtle slights sharpened into something harder to ignore. The whispers as he walked by, the glances that sized him up and found him wanting. Out in the scorching Arizona heat, he climbed into his delivery van, the weight of those moments settling heavier than the boxes he carried. They didn't see Marcus Tate, the man. They saw a uniform, a role, a nobody. And as he gripped the steering wheel, the Tucson skyline glaring back at him, a spark of defiance flickered. They thought they knew who he was. They had no idea what he was capable of. But soon they'd learn, the hard way. Her words hit like a spark to dry grass. Marcus leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Lena had always been the one to call him out, to remind him of the kid who'd turned a few bucks into a stack by reselling sneakers, who'd taught himself to read market trends while his peers were blowing their paychecks. He wasn't just a delivery driver, not really. That was the mask he wore, the version of himself he let the world see. But beneath it was a mind that saw patterns, calculated risks, and built plans while others slept. Remember what Mom used to say? Lena's voice cut through his thoughts. When people put you in a box, you've got two choices: stay in it or break it open. Marcus nodded, though she couldn't see him. I remember. So what's it gonna be? She asked. He didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted to the stack of delivery invoices on his coffee table, the worn scanner clipped to his belt, the life he'd built one package at a time. It was enough until it wasn't. Sterling and Vance thought they had him figured out. They thought he was small, insignificant, a punchline. But Marcus Tate was no punchline. And as the streetlight flickered outside, he made a decision. Breaking open that box wouldn't happen overnight. It would take time, strategy, and a fire he hadn't let himself feel in years. But it would happen, because the next time he walked through those glass doors, he wouldn't be carrying a package. He'd be carrying their future. Marcus Tate's apartment was quiet, save for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing outside. Lena's words echoed in his mind, sharp and unyielding. Break open the box. He leaned back in his armchair, the weight of the day settling into his bones. The laughter from Sterling and Vance wasn't new. People had underestimated him his whole life, from the teachers who assumed he'd never amount to much to the customers who barked orders without a second glance. But this time, the sting wasn't just personal. It was a challenge, a line drawn in the sand by people who thought they'd already won. He stood, pacing the small living room, his work boots still on, laces loose. The delivery scanner on the coffee table blinked faintly, a reminder of the role he'd played for years. It was steady work, honest work, but it wasn't him, not all of him. Marcus had always been more than the uniform, more than the guy who showed up with their packages and left without a trace. He'd taught himself to see opportunities where others saw dead ends. As a teenager, he'd turned a few bucks into a small fortune, flipping limited edition sneakers, knowing exactly when to buy and who'd pay top dollar. By his 20s, he'd moved on to bigger bets, used cars, stocks, even a silent stake in a local coffee shop that was now thriving. He didn't flaunt it, didn't need to. But Sterling and Vance? They'd made it clear they saw none of that. To them, he was just the delivery guy. And that was their mistake. Marcus stopped pacing and grabbed his laptop from the kitchen counter. The screen flickered to life, casting a blue glow across the room. He opened a folder labeled Projects, a digital vault of his real work, spreadsheets tracking investments, notes on market trends, and a business proposal he'd been refining for months. It was no coincidence that Sterling and Vance had caught his attention. He'd been watching them for years, not just as a delivery driver, but as a strategist. Every drop-off was a chance to observe. The way their employees coasted on reputation, the whispers of lost clients, the tension in the air when deadlines loomed. The agency was a house of cards, glossy on the outside but crumbling within, and Marcus knew he could do better. He pulled up a document titled Sterling and Vance Analysis. Line by line, he'd mapped their weaknesses: bloated budgets, outdated campaigns, a leadership team more interested in lunches than results. Their biggest client had pulled back 6 months ago, and the rumor was another was on the way out. The numbers didn't lie. Sterling and Vance was bleeding, and no one in those glass-walled offices seemed to know how to stop it. But Marcus did. He'd spent late nights studying, learning how to turn failing businesses around. 2 years ago, he'd quietly helped a struggling auto shop restructure its debt and triple its revenue. No one at Sterling and Vance would suspect it, but Marcus Tate was a fixer, and their agency was his next project. His phone buzzed, pulling him from the screen. A text from Lena. "You still thinking about those fools, or you planning something?" Marcus smirked, typing back, "Planning." He set the phone down and leaned over the laptop, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. The proposal in front of him wasn't just a plan, it was a blueprint for taking over Sterling and Vance. He'd already caught the eye of a few investors, people who didn't care about his day job but saw the spark in his numbers, his vision. One of them, a real estate tycoon named Victor Reyes, had asked to meet next week. If Marcus played it right, Reyes' money could be the first step toward buying the agency out from under its clueless executives. He closed the laptop and stood, the flicker of the streetlight outside catching his eye. The laughter from Sterling and Vance still burned, but now it was fuel. Nathan Bryce, Clara Hensley, the whole lot of them. They thought they were untouchable, perched in their chrome and glass kingdom. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Marcus wasn't just going to prove them wrong. He was going to take their kingdom, piece by piece, until the only name that mattered in that office was his. It wouldn't happen tomorrow, or even next month, but it would happen. Because Marcus Tate didn't just deliver packages, he delivered results. And Sterling and Vance was about to find out what that meant. Marcus Tate's laptop screen glowed in the dim light of his Tucson apartment. The Sterling and Vance analysis document, a roadmap to his ambition. The agency's cracks were laid bare in his notes. Client retention down 15% in 2 years, a debt load creeping toward 8 figures, leadership coasting on a reputation that no longer held weight. Marcus leaned back, the chair creaking under him, and let the numbers tell their story. Sterling and Vance wasn't just faltering, it was a sinking ship, and he was ready to steer it to new waters or sink it himself. The memory of Nathan Bryce's laugh and Clara Hensley's smug follow-up fueled his focus. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about opportunity. Marcus had spent years honing his instincts, learning to spot value where others saw none. He'd flipped sneakers, cars, and now businesses, each deal sharpening his ability to read people and markets. Sterling and Vance was his biggest play yet, and he wasn't stepping into it blind. His proposal, polished over countless late nights, had already piqued the interest of Victor Reyes, a real estate mogul who didn't waste time on dreamers. Their meeting was set for tomorrow evening, and Marcus knew it could be the pivot point. He opened another file, this one a draft email to Reyes, outlining the next steps. Marcus wasn't just asking for money, he was offering a vision. Sterling and Vance could be more than a flashy ad agency bleeding clients. With the right strategy, leaner operations, bolder campaigns, talent that wasn't coasting on ego, it could dominate the market. He'd seen the potential in the junior staff at Sterling, the ones ignored by Nathan and his clique, their ideas dismissed in favor of safe, outdated pitches. Marcus could unlock that, but first he needed the keys to the kingdom. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Lena. "You sure about this? Big move." Marcus typed back. "Sure as I've ever been." He set the phone down and stood, stretching his arms. The apartment felt smaller tonight, not because of its size, but because his plans were outgrowing it. He walked to the window, the Tucson skyline a patchwork of lights against the desert dark. Somewhere out there, Nathan Bryce was probably sipping craft beer, joking about the delivery guy without a clue that Marcus was already circling his world. The next evening, Marcus sat across from Victor Reyes in a private corner of a downtown Tucson lounge. The place was all sleek lines and low lighting, the kind of spot where deals were sealed over bourbon and handshakes. Reyes, a broad-shouldered man with a salt and pepper beard, studied Marcus with eyes that missed nothing. He swirled his drink, the ice clinking softly. "All right, Tate," he said, his voice gravelly. "Convince me. Why Sterling and Vance? Why you?" Marcus didn't flinch. He slid a slim folder across the table, its pages crisp with data. "Because they're drowning, and I know how to swim." He tapped the folder. "Their client base is eroding. Biggest accounts already halfway out the door. Their expenses are a mess, and their leadership's too busy polishing their egos to notice. I've run the numbers. 6 months, maybe 9, and they're either selling cheap or shutting down." Reyes raised an eyebrow, flipping through the folder. "You've done your homework." "I don't play games I can't win," Marcus said. "I've turned businesses around before. Smaller ones, sure, but the principles are the same. Cut the fat, focus on what works, empower the people who actually show up to build. Sterling's got talent buried under bad management. I can fix that." Reyes leaned back, his gaze steady. "And you want to buy them out? A delivery driver taking over an ad agency? That's a story." "It's not a story," Marcus corrected, his voice calm but firm. "It's a plan. I'm not here to play CEO for the optics. I'm here to make money. For me, for you, for anyone who backs this." Reyes took a slow sip of his drink, then set it down. "You're bold. I like that." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a pen, and scribbled a number on a napkin, sliding it across the table. "That's my starting offer. Enough to get you in the game. You deliver, there's more where that came from." Marcus glanced at the number. It was exactly what he needed to start buying shares, to begin prying Sterling and Vance from its complacent owners. He met Reyes' eyes and nodded. "Deal." As he left the lounge, the desert air cool against his skin, Marcus felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a handshake, it was the first domino falling. Sterling and Vance's glass-walled offices, Nathan's tailored suits, Clara's cutting remarks. They were all part of a world that thought it was untouchable. But Marcus Tate was coming for it, step by calculated step. The people who'd laughed at him had no idea their days were numbered. And when he walked through those doors again, It wouldn't be with a package in his hands. It'd be with their future in his pocket. Marcus Tate's boots echoed on the cracked pavement as he walked back to his van, the Tucson night alive with the hum of distant traffic. Victor Reyes' napkin, tucked in his pocket, wasn't just a number. It was a key, the first piece of a puzzle he'd been assembling for months. Sterling and Vance was a house built on sand, and Marcus was ready to pull the foundation out from under it. The agency's employees, with their polished desks and smug glances, had no idea their world was about to shift. But Marcus did, and he wasn't waiting for permission. The next few weeks were a blur of late nights and calculated moves. Marcus didn't quit his delivery job. Quitting would have raised questions, and he needed the cover of his routine. By day, he hauled packages, nodding politely as he dropped off parcels at Sterling and Vance, his presence as unremarkable as ever. By night, he was a predator, hunting the agency's weaknesses. With Rhea's backing, he began contacting Sterling and Vance's stakeholders, silent investors, former executives, anyone with a piece of the company who might be desperate to cash out. The agency wasn't publicly traded, but its private shares were bleeding value, and Marcus knew how to spot desperation. His first target was Evelyn Morrow, a retired partner who'd left Sterling and Vance a decade ago, but still held a 10% stake. Over coffee at a quiet diner, Marcus laid out his pitch, a fair price for her shares, no questions asked. Evelyn, her silver hair pulled tight, studied him over her glasses. "You're the delivery driver," she said, not unkindly, but with a trace of skepticism. "Why should I trust you with my investment?" Marcus slid a folder across the table, packed with financials and projections. "Because I see what they don't. Sterling's hemorrhaging clients and their leadership's asleep at the wheel. I'm not just buying your shares, I'm saving them." Evelyn flipped through the pages, her frown softening. By the end of the hour, she signed. One down, more to go. Piece by piece, Marcus collected shares, each deal a step closer to control. He worked through back channels, late-night calls, and discreet meetings in Tucson's quieter corners. Some stakeholders laughed at first, a delivery guy buying an ad agency. But his numbers were undeniable, his confidence unshakable. By the time he secured 51%, the controlling interest, Sterling and Vance, was his. The agency's CEO, Gregory Holt, didn't even know it yet. Marcus chose his moment carefully. Holt was a man who thrived on connections, not competence. A silver spoon executive who'd coasted on charm and a family name. The agency's decline had started under his watch, but Holt was too busy schmoozing clients to notice. Marcus sent a single email to Holt's assistant, Carla, a woman who'd worked at Sterling and Vance for 15 years, and signed for his deliveries countless times. Subject: urgent meeting required. Carla's reply was polite but puzzled. "Mr. Tate, may I ask what this is regarding?" Marcus didn't answer. Let them wonder. The morning of the meeting, Marcus walked into Sterling and Vance with a different kind of weight in his step. No delivery bag, no scanner, just a slim leather folder under his arm. The receptionist, usually distracted, froze when she saw him, sensing something off. The office buzzed with its usual rhythm, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, but a ripple of curiosity followed Marcus as he headed for Holt's corner office. Carla met him at the door, her expression a mix of confusion and caution. "Mr. Holt's waiting," she said, glancing at the folder. "This way." Holt's office was a shrine to ego. Mahogany desk, framed awards, a view of Tucson's skyline that screamed power. The man himself didn't stand when Marcus entered, just leaned back in his chair, irritation creasing his brow. "Tate, right?" Holt said, barely looking up from his phone. "The delivery guy. What's this about? Make it quick." Marcus set the folder on the desk, its thud cutting through the room's hum. "It's about the fact that, as of this morning, I own Sterling and Vance." Holt's fingers froze on his phone. He let out a short, disbelieving laugh, his eyes flicking to Marcus. "You? That's absurd." He leaned forward, his voice sharpening. "Who put you up to this?" "No one," Marcus said, his tone steady as stone. "Check the paperwork." He nodded at the folder. "It's all there, share transfers, signed and notarized. I hold 51%. That makes me the majority owner." Holt snatched the folder, his face tightening as he scanned the documents. His smirk faded, replaced by a flush of panic. This, this is impossible, he muttered, flipping pages faster, searching for a flaw. There wasn't one. He looked up, his voice rising. You think you can just waltz in here and... I already have, Marcus cut in, calm but unyielding. You've got until noon to clear out your office. I'd start now. Holt's jaw worked, his eyes darting between Marcus and the papers. You're nobody, he spat, but the words lacked force like a man grasping at air. Marcus leaned forward, just enough to meet Holt's gaze. I'm your boss, he said. And don't worry, Gregory. I hear there's always work for someone who's good at carrying things. The jab landed like a blade, flipping the script on every dismissal Marcus had endured. Holt's face reddened, but he said nothing, his hands trembling as he shoved the folder back across the desk. Marcus turned and walked out, the door clicking shut behind him. The office outside was a different world now. Heads turned, whispers spread, the air thick with shock. Carla stood frozen, her eyes wide. Marcus gave her a nod. Send a company-wide email, he said. Meeting in the main conference room. 10 minutes. As he strode through the office, Marcus felt the weight of every glance, every hushed word. Nathan Bryce, Clara Hensley, the whole smug crew. They were about to meet the man they'd laughed at. Not the delivery guy, the owner, and he was just getting started. The conference room at Sterling and Vance was a sleek expanse of glass and chrome, its long table surrounded by employees who shuffled in with a mix of curiosity and unease. Marcus Tate stood at the head of the room, his leather folder now closed, his presence commanding a silence that felt foreign in the agency's usually chatty space. The air buzzed with unspoken questions as staff settled into their seats, some stealing glances at each other, others staring at Marcus like he was a stranger who'd wandered into their world. Nathan Bryce leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. Clara Hensley sat nearby, her expression a mask of skepticism. They still didn't get it, but they would. Marcus let the silence stretch, his eyes sweeping the room, taking in every face, some nervous, some impatient, a few intrigued. He'd walked these halls for years, invisible to most of them, a punchline to others. Now every eye was on him. Good morning, he said, his voice steady, cutting through the tension. I'm sure you're wondering why you're here. Let's clear it up. As of today, I am the majority owner of Sterling and Vance. A gasp rippled through the room, followed by stunned silence. Nathan's smirk faltered, his arms unfolding. Clara's pen froze mid-twirl. A junior staffer in the back whispered, the delivery guy, only to be shushed. Marcus set his folder on the table, its weight a quiet authority. If anyone doubts it, he said, gesturing to the documents, the paperwork's right here. Share transfers, financials, contracts. It's done. No one moved. The reality settled like dust after a storm. Marcus took a step forward, his tone unwavering. I've been in this building for years. Most of you never saw me. Some of you did, and made sure I knew what you thought of me. His gaze flicked to Nathan, who shifted uncomfortably. I heard the jokes, the laughs, the idea that someone like me could never stand where I'm standing now. But here's the truth. While you were laughing, I was watching. I saw this company's mistakes, bad deals, lost clients, leadership that stopped caring, and I knew I could do better. A murmur ran through the room, a mix of shock and unease. Nathan scoffed, loud enough to draw eyes. This is a joke, right? He said, his voice sharp but less certain. You're telling us you're in charge? Marcus turned to him, his expression calm but piercing. I'm not telling you, Nathan. I'm showing you. He opened the folder, pulling out a single sheet. Let's talk about your department. Last year, you lost the Carson account. $4 million in revenue because you overpromised and didn't deliver. Your team's retention rate is the worst in the company. Want to explain that? Nathan's face flushed, his jaw tight. Those numbers are skewed. They're not, Marcus said, sliding the sheet across the table. I've got the reports. You've been coasting, Nathan, and it's cost this company. If anyone's out of place here, it's you. The room was still, the air heavy with the weight of Marcus's words. Clara shifted in her seat, her earlier smugness gone. A few junior staff exchanged glances. their eyes wide, not with fear, but with something like respect. Marcus turned back to the group. This company's been running on fumes, reputation, not results. That ends now. I know who brings value here. I know who's been skating by, taking credit for other people's work. And I know who's got ideas that never got a chance because of people like Nathan. He paused, letting the words sink in. Things are changing. Some of you won't like it. Some of you won't be here for it. A collective breath caught, eyes darting. Termination notices go out by end of day. If you're here to work, to build something better, you've got a place. If you're here to coast, to laugh at the people you think are beneath you, he glanced at Nathan again. There's the door. Nathan stood, his chair scraping loudly. You can't just, he started, his voice shaking with anger. I can, Marcus said, his tone final. And I will. Nathan's eyes burned, his pride warring with the truth. He straightened his blazer, forcing a laugh. Fine, I don't need this. I quit. He stormed out, the glass door rattling behind him. A heavy silence followed, but Marcus didn't flinch. He turned to the room, his voice steady. For those who stay, this isn't the Sterling and Vance you knew. It's going to be better, stronger, smarter, fairer. But it starts with the right people. If you're ready to step up, I'm ready to lead you. The room was quiet, but it wasn't the silence of shock anymore. It was the silence of realization. Some employees looked rattled, others inspired. A young designer in the back, who'd once pitched an idea only to be ignored, sat up straighter, her eyes locked on Marcus. Carla, standing by the door, gave a small nod, as if she'd seen this coming. Marcus left the conference room, the murmurs rising in his wake. The office was alive with whispers, glances, and a new kind of energy. He walked to Holt's former office, his office now, and closed the door. The space was overwhelming. A massive desk, shelves of untouched books, a view that stretched across Tucson's desert sprawl. He stood by the window, the city glittering below, and let out a slow breath. This was supposed to feel like victory, the moment he'd worked for. Months of deals, years of being underestimated, all leading to this. But as he looked out, Marcus realized it wasn't about proving Nathan or Holt wrong. It wasn't even about the office or the title. It was about what came next. There were people in this building, designers, assistants, interns, who'd been dismissed just like he had, their potential buried under bad leadership. Marcus could change that. He could build something real, something that lasted. A knock at the door broke his thoughts. Carla stepped inside, her expression cautious but warm. Everything okay, Mr. Tate? He turned, a small smile tugging at his lips. Just Marcus. And yeah, I'm good. You? She chuckled, folding her arms. Getting there. Been here a long time, seen a lot of bosses. But you? She shook her head, a spark of admiration in her eyes. Didn't see you coming. Nobody did, Marcus said. That's the point. Carla hesitated, then spoke. People are nervous out there. Holt's gone, Nathan's out, and, well, you're you. But I think this place needs that. It's been rotting for years. Marcus nodded. Then let's fix it. You in? She smiled, a real one this time. I'm in. As she left, Marcus turned back to the window, the city sprawling before him. Change was here, not just for Sterling and Vance, not just for the employees grappling with their new reality, but for him. He wasn't the delivery guy anymore. He was the leader they hadn't expected, the one they'd never forget. And this was only the beginning. The lesson was clear. Never write someone off because of where they start, because one day they might be the one rewriting your future.